The day Ryder Dawson walked into the old mechanic's garage, he wasn't looking for anything more than a decent vintage bike. But fate has a strange way of finding people when they least expect it. The moment he saw the dust-covered motorcycle leaning against the far wall, framed by sunlight pouring through cracked windows, he felt something shift inside him, like the echo of a life he had forgotten, or maybe never truly understood. The air smelled of oil, rust, and history, and for the first time in a long while, Ryder felt a pull stronger than the roar of any engine he had ever ridden. Before you go deeper into this story, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, or second chances, make sure to comment, share, and subscribe. It helps stories like these find more people who need them. Ryder wasn't the kind of man who showed his soul easily. He was a Hell Angels biker with scars inside and out, scars from nights spent running from memories he didn't want to face. His leather vest, decorated with patches and a history of its own, made strangers judge him instantly. But beneath the tattoos and the rough edges was a man quietly aching for something meaningful, something that could tell him who he was without the darkness of the past trying to define him. The owner of the garage was an old veteran named Frank. His hands trembled slightly as he leaned on a wooden cane, his back bent, but his eyes sharp with story's time, hadn't dared to steal. Frank watched Ryder run his palm along the old bike's metal tank with a tenderness that surprised even himself. The machine wasn't just old, it looked forgotten, as if time had held it hostage. The leather seat had cracks, the chrome was dull, but something about it whispered life. Ryder asked how much, expecting a negotiation. Instead, Frank simply nodded, almost relieved, and said the bike belonged with someone who could give it a second life. Ryder didn't understand the weight of those words then. Taking the bike back to his workshop, Ryder felt an unusual sense of anticipation. He was used to rebuilding machines like they were broken bones, piecing them together with patience and force. But this one felt different. As he worked, he felt a strange familiarity, like the bike somehow remembered him. Dust turned to shine, rust turned to steel, and little by little, something hidden beneath layers of time began to reveal itself. One evening, while inspecting the inside of the fuel tank, he noticed a metal rattle that didn't belong. It wasn't debris, it was something intentionally placed there. Ryder removed the tank, tapped it, and something small slid toward the opening. He reached in and pulled out a tightly rolled plastic tube stained with age. Inside was a photograph, folded carefully, and a dog tag that sent a jolt through his heart. The name engraved on the tag matched his last name, Dawson. Ryder sat frozen as he unfolded the photograph with shaking hands. It showed a much younger Frank standing beside another soldier. The second man had Ryder's eyes, Ryder's jaw, Ryder's smile. He had seen the face only once before in a single old picture his mother kept hidden at the bottom of a drawer. It was the father Ryder had never met. The father he believed had abandoned them. Suddenly, everything blurred. The sound of rain against the workshop roof, the ticking of cooling metal, all of it faded. Ryder felt something heavy, something old and wounded, pushing up from the deepest part of him. His father hadn't left. He had gone to war. And Frank had known him. Ryder returned to the garage the next morning, not as the rough biker who had walked in days earlier, but as a man desperate for answers. When Frank saw the dog tag in Ryder's hand, the old veteran's eyes filled with a mix of recognition and grief. Ryder didn't need to ask. Frank began talking as though he had been waiting years for someone to come. Frank told him how his father, Michael Dawson, had been his closest friend in the military. They had fought together, laughed together, carried each other through nightmares no one else could understand. When the war grew darker and their unit grew smaller, Michael had entrusted Frank with one promise: if anything ever happened to him, make sure his son knew he wasn't abandoned, he was loved, fiercely, endlessly. But when Michael didn't make it home, Frank couldn't find Ryder's mother. Life scattered them all in different directions, and with age stealing his strength, Frank hid the dog tag inside the bike. Michael loved most, praying one day fate would put it in the right hands. As Ryder listened, he felt something break inside him, not in a painful way, but like a dam collapsing, releasing years of unanswered questions and buried anger. He realized he had spent his whole life believing he wasn't worth staying for, when the truth was his father had fought until his last breath, wanting to return. Frank reached out and held Ryder's shoulder with a trembling hand. The old man apologized for not finding him sooner, but Ryder shook his head. For the first time, he understood that life doesn't always give us perfect timing. It gives us the moments we're finally ready for. In the following days, something changed in Ryder. The world didn't suddenly become soft, and he didn't magically become gentle, but he started carrying himself differently. He rode the restored motorcycle not with the reckless force he used to, but with a sense of purpose, knowing the engine beneath him carried the memory of a man who loved him before he ever took his first breath. Before we move to the ending, if this story touched your heart so far, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the beauty in unexpected places. Ryder began spending time with Frank, not out of obligation, but out of growing affection. The garage became a place of healing for both of them, two men connected by someone they both loved, learning to rebuild more than engines. On the last day of summer, Ryder took Frank for a ride on the restored motorcycle. The wind rushed around them as the sun turned the sky gold. Frank closed his eyes, leaning against Ryder's back, smiling in a way that carried decades of peace he had never allowed himself to feel. Comment below, what would you do if you discovered a hidden truth about your family like this? And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ryder realized something profound. Sometimes the family we lose finds a way back to us, not through blood alone, but through stories, through memories, through people who refuse to let love die. And in that moment, Ryder knew he was no longer riding alone.